Hey, ambitious dentist, welcome to Start Your Dental Practice, the show for existing and aspiring dentists to take your dental practice to the highest possible level. I'm your host, Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV, founder of DentistMetrics.com. In every episode, we aim to demystify the how to start a dental practice problem by bringing on world-class dentists, influencers, and consultants in the dental industry to pick their brain about how to get past the barriers involved from going from no practice to being a practice owner to owning your own successful dental practice. As you may know, a few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of attending and presenting at the Voices of Dentistry event. It was easily one of the best events I've attended in recent memory, and I was fortunate enough to be able to connect with some of the best in the business. Turns out, when a bunch of podcasters get together for a live event, they tend to, record some podcasts. So I hope to be sharing what I learned over the next few weeks, as well as some of the many conversations I had with other top performing attendees and speakers. And so today I'm excited to share my chat with Dr. Mike DiTolla, who you may know from the Accidental Genius podcast or from the Sirona World event that he throws every year that has up to 8,000 attendees. That's 8,000. Tons of people go to this. These are the big name events. Arguably the biggest event in dentistry every year. Past presenters at this event, the Dentsply Sirona World event were people like Jerry Seinfeld, people like Richard Branson, or Sir Richard Branson. And they've just released that this year, the speaker is actually going to be Simon Sinek. So one of the most famous TED Talk speakers there is, as well as one of the thought leaders in leadership and running a successful business. So, excited to hear about that. And that literally just came out as an announcement yesterday. So I'm excited to be able to talk about that today. If you haven't heard it, that announcement, you heard it here first then. So, in our interview, he dives deep into mastering the art of crowns and bridges, as well as some of his best tips and tricks to grow your practice. So, without exception, improving your crown and bridge procedures can make a really huge difference in your practice. So, this one, is a little bit more clinically minded. And I even tell him, and it's like, I don't know anything about clinical, so you can keep it simple for me. So, I know you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So here's what you're going to learn. That's how to leverage community to grow your network and practice. How Dr. DiTolla got into the dental industry and what he's learned from 25 plus years in the field. Why mobile is so important for your practice and continuing education. 3 mistakes new dentists make and how to avoid them. Why dentists are like professional athletes and what that means for your practice. The best way to learn from your peers to improve your procedures, and a whole lot more. And so at the end of the episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the next event that I'll be attending, which is the Dental Ownership Summit in San Antonio, Texas on February the 16th and 17th of 2017. Apparently, it's just going to be a season of awesome events, so be sure to listen in to the end to learn more about that. Now, here's my interview with Dr. Mike DiTolla. Hello, ambitious dentists. Today, I have the esteemed pleasure of interviewing Dr. Mike DiTolla here at the Voices of Dentistry podcast summit. There's lots of things going on. We were in the podcast booth, which is a little table that's fairly small. And Dr. DiTolla is one of the hosts of the Accidental Geniuses podcast with the enigmatic Dr. Austin. So, Dr. DiTolla, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. This is a great event. I'm proud of Alan for taking a risk and putting this on. You look at a lot of the big dental meetings that have kind of popped up from nowhere, and they kind of all the good ones anyway have sprung from like a community of some sort, like the Dental Town meeting,
yep.
The TBSE meeting, the one that I'm in charge of now, which is the old CEREC meetings. It's now called Dentsply Sirona World, DS World. We hope to have 8,000 dentists there this year, and all of these have started from this small community. The one that I run came from the community of the CEREC world, dentists doing intraoral digital scans and then milling crowns chairside. A question you probably get asked about that equipment from time to time, I would think, by dentists who want to know if they should invest $135,000.
Especially on December 20th.
Exactly, for their Section 179 tax breaks. But it's neat that the hacks decided to take a chance and do this, because it's always that first year that's the most difficult. It's going to be the least amount of attendees. And to me, it's that same kind of feeling I remember in high school. throwing a party because we happen to have a full basement in California, which is really rare. So it seemed like a party room, and you would, let everybody know, and party was going to start at 8 p.m. and it'd be like 8:15 and nobody was there. And it's just this awful feeling that, no one's going to show up. And I was really happy that the hacks decided to do this and push through and made it happen. And yes, today we're sitting at a little table, in a nondescript room. But with the way my addiction to podcasts and I love consuming them, producing them. I have no doubt that in, 5 to 7, 10 years, we'll be at the Venetian in Las Vegas doing this, in a room where it's going to look like Radio Row at the National Association of Broadcasters. Or if you, ever get a chance to go to the Super Bowl, you'll see, radio stations lined up down a huge hallway where athletes just kind of make the rounds there. And, so it's neat to be here at the inaugural one, knowing it's only going to grow bigger and get more successful as time goes on.
The quality of the content of the presenters has been so astronomically high. I've been telling everyone, so I'm a CPA, so we have to have at least minimum 40 hours a year of education.
Right.
I have to have 60 because I have a designation of being a business evaluator. And if we could get even...
You have to do 40. A regular CPA has to do 40 a year, yes. and you have to do 60. Yes. That's almost twice as much as the dentist does. Doesn't that seem crazy, considering that we're working on humans?
Somebody's got to pay the CPA's employees to be there, so...
Are you allowed to do can you do most of them online, or do you have to go in person for most of them?
You can do 60%.
60%. Wow.
So yeah, but it's if we could get just even 50% of the quality in a CPA conference that these guys have gotten today, I would sign up for it every year.
Really? So there's kind of a lack of quality at the CPA programs.
It's all technical based.
Right.
So you go there and you learn about how to do a compilation for a construction company. It's like, okay, that's the most, I will never use that.
Well, I don't really accept that excuse though. Only because, I've been speaking in dentistry for probably 25 years now, and I've always tried to make it a combination of education and entertainment. For a couple of reasons. That was the only way that I could stay interested in it, was making it funny and I think it's more memorable if you do that. And you can make an argument and say, well, you're talking about a root canal. You're talking about how to do this step and this step, how to clean it, shape it, debride it, obturate it. And that doesn't sound very exciting either. And maybe those exact steps aren't, but there's always a way to be able to get launched into a story of, one time this happened, or a funny, picture about the root canal or something. So I almost think that the speakers have a responsibility to earn the attention of the audience and hopefully keep it and hopefully give them breaks mentally, if not physically, like every 45 minutes or at the latest every 90 minutes, because it's difficult to get adults to pay attention that long. But I somewhat reject the concept that just because it's super dry, the content matter, that it can't be made entertaining, and memorable. And it's not your fault.
I think it's because
you just get stuck listening to these.
Dentists are funnier than CPAs.
Wow. Well, we finally found a group that dentists are funnier than.
I always tell people I got out of the most exciting industry in the world, which is accounting. I got the second most exciting industry, which is dentistry.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and, we didn't talk about this before the podcast, but, the people you're listening to right now are mostly younger dentists.
Right.
And so tell them a little bit about your story of dentistry, where you ended up today,
okay,
and how things got moved out.
Well, to your point, I'm the clinical director at Dentsply Sirona, this huge kind of company in dentistry.
Yep.
And I'm also the director of Dentsply Sirona World, that big meeting that we put on every year. But before that, I practiced inside of a dental laboratory for 15 years, which was fascinating as well. And we produced a ton of clinical education while I was there. In the beginning, we sent out DVDs. This was back in the days when you'd get an AOL DVD once a week to install their browser on your computer. And then one day we realized, people really aren't consuming things like this anymore. We can probably stop sending DVDs and just stream it. So it'd be available from the website through YouTube and a bunch of different places. And the thing that we found interesting, we just assumed that dentists were watching it on their computer. And it was shocking to us when we found that that nearly 75% of the people who are watching the content were watching it on a mobile device, either a phone or an iPad, and they were watching for an average time length of about 27 minutes. And it was like, wow, where are they doing this? Because I'm 52, so I'm of the generation who grew up with, VHS tapes and DVDs and briefly laser discs. But for me, it's still like, I'm going to watch it on the biggest screen possible. Right. And as we started to dig a little deeper, you could tell by the license numbers how old these dentists were. And you're right, the younger dentists not only consume podcasts and other streaming media, but they do it on mobile devices when it's most, convenient for themselves. So I have seen that to be true, exactly what you said. So I
we had somebody yesterday telling us they like to listen to us in the shower, which was an interesting
I do a balancing act with my phone on the top of the shower door.
Nice.
I also have a little Bluetooth speaker that I prefer to put up there because it's not as bad. It doesn't cost as much. Supposedly this 7 Plus is water resistant, but I'm not sure. I want to find out. But I graduated from dental school from University of the Pacific in 1988, and I went into private practice. I had the opportunity to practice with my dad for a couple of years first, which was amazing. There's so many like father-son dentists out there when you start talking to dentists, because it's not one of those things where people grow up and just think that, I want to do this. There almost has to be somebody like it was for me. And it wasn't about the work. It was about the not work part. Like, I saw my dad from the time I was 5 till probably 17. He shut his office for the entire month of August. Just shut the doors. Didn't have an associate. Boom, just closed for August, and we went to Hawaii for a month.
That's amazing.
Every summer. Yeah. And, it wasn't extravagant. It wasn't extravagant. We rented a house there. We didn't stay in a hotel. My mom still had to cook every night. It was a lot like she was home. I think we went out like one night a week. He rented a station wagon from Rent-A-Wreck, and then everything rusts out in Hawaii. You can see like the road going underneath if you lifted up the rubber floor mats. But he really liked time off. And so he would take the entire month of August off. He worked, 4 days a week. He always said he didn't care about going to work on Monday because he had just been off Saturday and Sunday. He was good with going to work on Tuesday because he knew he had Wednesday off. And he was fine on Thursday because he had just had a Wednesday off, and he didn't care about Friday because he knew he had the weekend coming up, which is, 4 days, about 8 hours a day. That's a part-time job for most Americans. And it's a part-time job where you get to take all of August off as well. So I kind of fell in love with the features and benefits of being a dentist without really knowing what the job was all about.
That became your norm almost.
Yeah. And when I got to dental school and saw what we had to do, I was just like, oh my God, I made the wrong mistake. I remember the first injection I had to give, and you give it to like the classmate who sits next to you, and you just pair off like alphabetically. And I remember giving an injection. It was just an infiltration over tooth number 8, a tooth that's insanely easy to numb. You almost can't miss it. You couldn't. You really couldn't miss it. I've only seen one person miss it, and it was a helicopter pilot on a trip we took to Mexico. But it's almost impossible to not get somebody numb. So it's an easy injection, but it was the very first time I'd stuck a needle in somebody's body. So I've got his lip picked up, and as I'm doing this, there's sweat, I swear, pouring. It looked like that scene in Airplane where he was sweating and they had the like tubes coming over the water, and so they were wiping like my forehead, and I just continued to sweat. It was comical. It looked like I was doing open heart surgery on the Pope or a mob boss with the level of stress that I had, and I was just like, what am I doing here? And, but it's, you get used to it like you get used to anything. And, it ended up being, just an amazing, opportunity. So I was in private practice for 15 years, and I was into education very early and wanted to start lecturing very early because I enjoyed being around other dentists. I enjoyed, this public speaking itself. And so after those 15 years, I had started making some videos with this local dental laboratory, Glidewell, this huge dental laboratory in Newport Beach, California. And they asked about coming in full time. They said they would build like a little practice for me inside of Glidewell. And I was like, well, I'd have to sell, my practice and come in here. And the owner of the lab, and I didn't realize how much money he was making at the time. He was like, well, what would it take to have you do it? I was like, well, I'd have to sell my practice. I'd have to come in here and you'd have to pay me this much. And he's like, done. I was like, damn it. It's like when you put your house up for sale and it says there's a full offer or over.
The first person says, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, damn it. I must have screwed that up. So in retrospect, I would have gone a lot higher than like a ridiculously high number. But I spent the next 15 years there practicing inside the world's biggest dental laboratory. And it was fascinating. You know, that lab works with 40,000 dentists a month. 40,000 dentists a month order one thing from Glidewell, which is almost half the dentists in the United States.
Sure, yeah.
And you see such a crazy assortment of, you know, tooth preparations, of impressions that come in, all kinds of stuff, running the gamut from, you know, dentists in Alaska to Alabama, all over the states, dentists presumably of all skill levels. And it's fascinating. And I got an education there that I couldn't have got anywhere else. And it was like, wow, I want to go out and share what I'm seeing here, you know, with other dentists and see if we can't show them a way to be able to maybe not make these mistakes that I'm currently making, and then I had to teach myself ways to correct it. And so that's what the course that I was teaching at the time kind of became about, was the lessons learned from being inside that large dental laboratory. And
what
then
are some of those lessons that came out that would be good for the
well, we all basically make the same mistakes. I mean, it's hard to really make new mistakes. It's kind of the regularity with which they're made that can be scary. The biggest one is just not reducing enough on the occlusal surface, the chewing surface of a tooth when you're doing crown and bridge. You know, crown and bridge typically, I mean, the single unit crown itself can make up about 40% of the production in a dental office. Yep. You throw in the multiple crowns and the bridges, yeah, you're probably going to get up to 60, 65%. I mean, this is a huge part of the process of, you know, doing a lot of production and collections. And it's what most GPs love doing, is crown and bridge. If they could do nothing but that and not have to do class 2 direct composites, they'd probably go, yeah, I'm good with that. Not have to do pedo or anything else. We love doing, crown and bridge. Well, if they're your own, yeah, that's why God graced us with pedodontists, people who are somehow willing to put up with that, because it would drive me absolutely batty, you know, trying to have to do that. So when you look at crown and bridge, the one thing that can really sink the profitability is remakes. And so, you know, dentist takes an impression, sends it to the lab, gets the crown back, tries it in the patient's mouth, doesn't fit for whatever reason. And now if the dentist has time and the patient has time, they're going to have to re-anesthetize them and pack cord, take another impression. Or if they don't have time, get them back, you know, a week later and do it again for free. And it's that lost opportunity cost of that next appointment, that next Tuesday at 9 a.m. Yes, there's the fixed overhead of whatever, $350 an hour. But that next Tuesday from 9 to 10, when you're redoing that crown for free, you're never going to be able to get back that opportunity to produce $1,500 or whatever you produce per hour in that room. And so it's weird to me that dentists don't measure their remakes. You know, it's kind of like their case acceptance rate. You know, like if you ask one of your dentists, what's your case acceptance rate? He'll go, I don't know, 90, 92%. And you go to the front office and they'll go, probably like 70, 75.
And you look at it, it's like 30.
Yeah, in the ones who are, yeah, and it all depends if it's being measured or not. Well, at the lab, we measured everybody's remakes because we had a no-fault remake policy. So if a dentist tried a crown in from Glidewell and it didn't fit, no questions asked, we'd make him a new one for free. But we wanted to know how many of these we were making for free, because there were times where their remakes would get so high that we would fire them as a dental laboratory. We'd say, hey, this is not working out. You know, you should. I was practicing in the lab. I had the best technicians there working on my stuff, and I was trying to do the best I could because we videotaped everything I did there to be able to release the stuff that would help dentists on the outside. And my remake rate was right around 6%. And that's with personal lab technicians. You know, I'm practicing inside a laboratory. It's kind of the best possible scenario. And it was 6%. So out of every 100 crowns that I did, 94 would go to place. Sure. And 6 of them would need to be remade. Maybe it was the wrong color. Impression got distorted. Temporary came off. Patient didn't come in for 2 weeks. Whatever it might have been. And that's actually pretty good. A 94% success rate is really good. There was a lot of dentists we would see at the laboratory with 20, 30, 40% remake rates, 50% remake rates.
What do you think they would say that they thought their number was?
I don't know because nobody ever admits to this. I don't know that they know there's another way to do it, but that just crushes the profitability.
Oh, yeah.
Even on a like a full arch case, if you're doing 12 or 14 crowns, just having to redo 2 or 3 of them, you go, oh, well, 10 went in. We're just going to have to do that. Can totally eat into the profitability of that case too. So my focus in the courses has been lowering remakes and getting it to 6%. We also had a bunch of dentists at Glidewell who had 0% remakes. Now that sounds, but when you look at their impressions and their preps, they weren't that good.
How is that occurring then?
They'll just cement anything.
Oh, okay.
They're cementing crap in people's mouth.
That makes sense, yeah.
They'll cement it. They're like, we call them Dr. MacGyver. They'll find a way. They'll cut off part of the crown.
Just a
They'll
piece of bubble
reshape
gum.
the tooth. They'll just make this thing fit somehow, because they don't have a quality control filter. That's what I like about the 40 to 50% remake people. Even though dentistry's beating them over the head with a stick and kicking them in the crotch, they still are at least honest enough with themselves to still reject half of them because it didn't fit. Tell the patient we're going to try it again because we can do better than that. But there's some disconnect with the skills. But as you asked, and I started to answer, the number one mistake is just not reducing enough of the tooth. And it's really tough when you start drilling on the top of a tooth and reducing the tooth structure just to, look with one eye and see how much you've reduced. It's a guess, but that's what 95% of dentists do, is take an educated guess. Being able to see with the human eye the difference between a millimeter of reduction and 2 millimeter in this dark, shadowy mouth when you're trying to stretch the cheek back. It's a true art if you can do it. And I don't think there's that many people who can do it. So I couldn't. And so I had to come up with a way, since we were filming everything. I needed things to look good on film. So I just started taking these 2 millimeter burrs that had a shoulder on them where you could push it in and it would go 2 millimeters and no farther, and then take it out. And I started putting holes on the top of the tooth and then just drilling till the holes were gone. And it's the reason why if we had a handpiece here and a model, I could teach you very easily how to reduce 2 millimeters, because you just make 4 holes, 2 in the center of the tooth, and then just reduce it. It's simple. I mean, it's the easiest way possible, but it requires you to slow down a little bit at the beginning and you put these holes in, but it saves you so much time in the remakes, down the road when there's not enough room for the crown and you're having to grind on it to get it to fit, and, or the crown breaks, after 3 to 6 months because it's not thick enough on that chewing surface where all the stress is.
Which ends up making the patient really mad.
They're not real pleased. Yeah, you can only blame it on them so much, when it breaks. And so that was really one of the big ones, and just using these depth cuts to be able to reduce enough. So it's going to be a nice looking crown. If you want a lab technician to make it look realistic for you, you've got to give them enough room to do their work. So it ends up looking better and it ends up lasting longer. It's just that most dentists don't do that. They're taught to do it in dental school, but they're usually taught kind of a weird way to do it. But there's a lot of things in dental school when you get out that you realize are kind of antiquated. And so you just stop doing them right away. That's one of the things that gets thrown in there and shouldn't be, is using those depth cuts. Because a conservative estimate would be that 80% of the preparations we saw there were under reduced in at least one area. And that's a lot. That's 8 out of 10. That's a lot. And then the second area, second biggest mistake would be at the margin of the crown, where the crown and the tooth actually come together. There has to be an intimate fit there, hopefully 100 microns or less. And a lot of times on a tooth, it just, the margin where you can see where they prepped it, and then it gets really indistinct on the lingual side, the tongue side, on the back, the distal lingual side. And it's because it's the hardest area for us to get, whether you're left-handed or right-handed. It's just the most difficult area to get to have the patient turn towards you. And I started using this weird burr to do my margins with. It's a round burr for the dental listeners at home, and it's an 801-021, or you can use an 018 or an 016. It comes in different sizes. And you just take this it's a round ball, and you just prep right above where the gum tissue is, and it gives you a perfect half circle. And then by the time you reduce the rest of the tooth, you're left with a perfect quarter circle. It's the easiest way to prep a margin compared to how we're taught in school, and it gives you a better result. It's truly one of those times where you're working like smarter, not harder, by using this round burr. And if anyone, your listeners want to look, if you just Google like reverse preparation technique, okay. I've showed, it's all over the internet and showing how to do it on a live patient. And, it's simple. It's straightforward. I had to do it because I wasn't born with a great set of hands. I told you I wanted to become a dentist so I could take a month off and go to Hawaii.
Sure.
And then, even though there's like a perceptual test and other things you have to do to get in dental school, there's definitely people who get in like me who don't have a great set of hands. My right hand's actually really good. It's the left one that's kind of dragging me down. The problem is I'm left-handed. And so that was the particular struggle. And so I really did have to find a way that I could get results that I saw the masters getting. Like I could look and see what they were doing up on the screen. I could probably draw it. I could certainly explain it, but then I could not sit down and do it with my hands. And we can't all be in the top 10% of the class. There's always going to be this other 90% of the class. And there's no reason, if these people are caring and concerned like I am with patients, that you can't get great results. You just need to find a different way to get to the same end result. It's kind of like paint by numbers. You know, if somebody's really artistic, they can sit down and just paint something that looks wonderful. I need the numbers there so I can go and paint that way. And if we end up at the same point, it's fine. I don't even think the patient cares how you get there, as long as you get to a good result. And even flying here, you know, or anytime you're on an airplane, if you glance over and look, these pilots with gray hair who've been flying for, 25 years are still have a checklist, to make sure they get everything right. There's nothing wrong with the checklist. And for me, that burr kit that I use is my checklist to make sure that I get good results. So I don't think you can say, well, I don't have there's not a good excuse to not do great crown and bridge preparations. You may not have been born with a great set of hands or great perceptual ability, but it doesn't matter, because I proved it, because when you look at pictures of my preparations, I look at them sometimes and I'm like, I don't know how I can do that. And the only way I can do it is using these depth cutters, the right depth in the right place. And then you connect the dots and boom, it looks exactly like what a super talented dentist would do. And so there's really no excuse for not being able to do the best for your patients. You just can't be happy with mediocrity. And the problem is that laboratories, because the dentists are cutting a check to the dental laboratory is very hesitant to critique the dentist for fear of them going somewhere else.
Oh, it's always the lab's fault. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Well, that's okay. That you can still say that. That's fine. But the lab you almost have to give the lab permission to give you feedback on your preparations and what they would like to see different. But a lot of dentists don't want to do that. So that's really the message that I've spent the last 15 years preaching, is you too can get great looking results regardless of what set of hands you were born with, and then showing a technique that allows them to do it.
And you're just thinking through that with people that talk to me about like their numbers, looking at the profit and losses and seeing how they're doing comparatively to other practices. And they come to me because they're all like super smart people, but they aren't as educated on that as I am. Right. I've seen it amongst many different practices, and we have that discussion all the time. It's the same thing with the lab. I guess I've never thought about that relationship between the practice and the lab, is that you can really use the lab as a resource to be able to help you get better, because that lab person probably has seen the most beautiful work in your area.
Right.
And so they can try and tell you, well, this is the equipment that is used in these types of places. This has these things to be better. Maybe there's these resources you might want to try out. So I never thought about that. That's interesting.
Well, it's true. Like if you broke a tooth one day and you needed a crown and you didn't know where to go, probably the best call you could make would be to a local dental laboratory. Get the owner on the phone and say, hey, if you broke a tooth tomorrow and need a crown, where would you go? And he'll give you 2 or 3 names. And you'll say, why? Are they the cheapest? And they're like, I don't even know. I don't know what they charge, because I charge all my dentists the same thing for crowns. All I know is his or her preps and impressions look really nice, and I can tell that they know what they're doing and care about the result they get. And so, the lab techs definitely know where they would go, and they've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We get together as dentists and kind of brag about what we do and how good our practices are doing and how good our preps look. But that's where the rubber really meets the road, and that's where I got to see all these preps and impressions coming in and going, oh, okay. Oh, hey, look, there's a lecture there. Oh, that doesn't look as good as, and so and I'm going to take a little issue with your characterization of dentists as super smart people.
Okay.
I just don't think you need to be super smart. There are dentists who are super smart, and I'd say most of them are smart, but I really think compassion and just caring about the end result is a more important trait. You don't have to be smart for crown and bridge. I mean, I look at us more as almost athletes than professors, or I don't know, something that requires you to think a lot, like a NASA scientist. I look at us more like athletes, where we're performing with our hands, over and over and over the same procedures. And hopefully, if we're making progress, we're much faster at it now than we were, kind of 10 years ago. And hopefully we're also looking for ways to be more efficient, but also be better at it at the same time. So I see it more in a technical sense, where it is about practicing and doing it over and over, but also looking at new tools and technology and instruments that will allow us to get a better result and really be able to disconnect our mind, because what you don't want to do, whether it's heart surgery or dentistry, you don't want to have to go to somebody whose technique depends on them being brilliant every day.
Sure.
Because no one's going to be brilliant every day. You just can't. Everybody's got bad days. Everybody gets in fights with their spouse, gets cut off in traffic, stays up too late watching Monday Night Football, whatever. I want dentists to have a technique where it's almost automated. I do it the same way every time on these crowns, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be brilliant. It's kind of like in the laboratory. All the crowns we used to make were handmade by dental technicians. That all changed about 8 years ago when we got milling units and then 3D printers, and then CAD CAM really became huge. And today at Glidewell, the world's biggest lab, 100% of the crowns are made by machines. Humans intervene at the end, but these mills are much more consistent on a day-to-day basis than human beings ever can be. When it comes to adding the right color, that's still done by hand. That's not automated yet. I'm sure it will be. But we saw a consistency there that we didn't used to have. It's a huge dental laboratory. I'm sure most of your people listening have tried Glidewell at some point. Some probably love them. Some probably hate them. Some probably ambivalent towards them. But the thing that used to drive everyone crazy was that it was a great value, $99 for a crown. A lot of local labs, like for an Emax crown, are charging $175. But you get two great ones, and then you get two crappy ones from them. Then you get another great one. Then you get three mediocre ones. Then you get three great ones, and then four awful ones. It's just like the consistency was all over the board, because when they were made by hand, you might have a technician working on it who had 2 months experience, and then one who had 20 years, and then one who had 4 years. And you could not request what technician you wanted to go to for $99. It's going to go to who it goes to, and you'll be happy with it. It's like a Big Mac. No special orders. This isn't Burger King and the Whopper. But with the machines, now that the milling units are doing the zirconia, all of a sudden, as long as they're routinely calibrated, they're much more consistent. And so all of a sudden the larger labs can really kind of compete with the smaller labs because the consistency is not so crazy like it used to be. And that's, to me, the dream is, as a dentist, we should all dream that one day we take something about the size of the unit that we're recording on and we put it in the patient's mouth, and a burr comes down and it preps it, and does all the prepping for us in a very exact manner, exactly what it's supposed to be, and makes it look perfect, much like autopilot on an airplane. Is it replacing the dentist? No, you still need a dentist there to, run it, and in case something goes wrong, like you do.
Almost like an implant, from what I've heard people using guides.
Yeah, like a surgical guide. I've spent the last 8 years trying to come up with that same kind of guide for prepping teeth. It's just really difficult, and it would require people to buy new drills, new hand pieces. There was a company from Korea who brought me one that I liked, but you had to replace everything. So far yet, we don't have that, but that's going to be a huge step in the right direction when that happens. Because right now it's totally freehand. It's just people guessing, people prepping. If the aviation industry was run this loosely, as dentists are with Crown and Bridge, there'd be planes falling out of the sky left and right because, pilots are using checklists to make sure that doesn't happen.
Every hamburger at McDonald's would be a different size.
Exactly. Instead of the total uniformity of a Big Mac from France to Hong Kong to here in the United States. So if you're early on in your career, it's a perfect time to start making these good habits. And the first habit is just this constant improvement, that you can always get better or find something else to make it better, and just never kind of be satisfied with how you're doing. I really think that the DSOs, the corporate dental groups that we're seeing, help some of this because they're interested in measuring remakes. Unlike the solo practitioner who doesn't want to know. This definitely affects the bottom line. So they definitely want to know. And now you've got 4 dentists in the same office who are looking at each other's impressions. So there's a little peer pressure, or at least you get to see this other dentist's impression, go, that looks really good. How'd you do that? And maybe it's somebody who's been practicing longer, maybe not, but usually there's like a mentor who's figured these things out. Whereas when you're in a solo practice, you never know. Unless you go to your lab and go visit them, you don't really see other dentists' impressions. You don't really know. It's easy to assume, like I used to when I was taking crappy impressions, that everybody's impressions look like this. That everybody was, having to guess to see where their margins were. And then I found out that that wasn't true. So as solo practitioners seem to bunch up into groups more. I think it's a good thing. I think you get an opportunity really to be able to see what other dentists are doing and being able to go, oh, I know that looks better than mine. What is he or she doing that I'm not doing? But this is the time young in your career to do it. I mean, you may not be as busy as you're going to be in 5 or 7 years. And this is the time to dive into anything, whether it's surgically placing implants. Once you get I didn't place my first implant till I'd been out of school for 20 years, and it was really scary. But when you get out of dental school, everything's scary.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're doing everything for like the 15th time.
Paying your taxes for the first time is really scary.
Exactly. Quarterly deposits. And so it's kind of like, just throw one more scary thing and then surgically place an implant, as long as you're being scared, on a daily basis. So yeah, this is really the time to make that commitment to excellence. And you can't, there's patients who just won't cooperate, and you're not going to get a great result. And that's just going to be the way it is. But on the other ones, this is the time, and go to your laboratory, go over there and look at other dentists' impressions, go see what they're doing. Back when I used to prep, and single units are still the way it gets done. Like at Glidewell, 78% of the impressions that came in were single unit crowns. And then another 11% were 2 units. And so 1 and 2 units is the way it gets done in the United States. Go look and see what other dentists are doing, and look at their impressions and see how yours stack up. Look at their preparations, because otherwise you just really never see it. We're in these insular little worlds. And I think it'd be great if you took your client's information, blacked out all the names, or just made a new sheet and shared it with all of them, if they were all willing to turn it in order to get back this thing, and see somebody down the street who's producing 600,000 more a year than they are, and go, what are, how is that happening? And it could be for good reasons. It could be for bad reasons, but it may be interesting to find out, why and how they're doing what they're doing. And so I think that only helps. I know there's, probably a rule against
we do have
fee sharing or something,
but guidelines and things like that about having to, we can't release client names unless it's voluntarily given to us through like a testimonial or something like that. But we actually do that every 6 months. We say we've got 50 practices we're helping right now, and so we're putting all these. These are the practices that did less than 500,000. These are the ones that did between 500,000 and $1 million. These are the ones that did $1.5 million, $1.5 million plus. And we say, this is the group you're in. This is yours. This is what the average in that group was amongst every different category of expenses and revenue. This is your overhead. This is your profitability. And people just go, oh my God.
Right.
What? How are they doing that?
Who's this and how they're doing this, and how are they doing this?
Right. And the beauty is we've got clients in 20 states, so it's no one they've ever heard of.
Right.
So it's easy for me to say, all I have to do is call the other client and say, hey, how you doing this?
Right.
And say, because I have somebody who has this, you're doing really well on it, and I've got clients that don't do well on it. It's not going to affect you. Do you mind if I share your secret sauce?
I wish you could add Crown and Bridge remakes to that report as well. But you could. Well, it'd be tough, and the dentist would really have to one of the dental assistants would probably have to be in charge of counting how many crowns get cemented and how much.
Do the remake for free, or they charge?
Not really. No, we were kind of unique. In fact, we didn't even advertise that. It was never in any of our ads, but it was just always, some people knew it, of course, but they knew it when they had one remade, and we didn't charge for it. Most don't. Most will refuse to work on a case if the impression doesn't look good. But Jim wasn't like that. Jim was, we were the Walmart of dental labs. And so we took all of those on and would remake them for free. So I don't think, if I had to guess, I'd say maybe 10 to 15% do it as a rule like that. Now they will, I'm sure, on certain cases with certain doctors when they know when it's good work or something like that. But that's kind of that's kind of a renegade thing to do it just for everybody. That's a little crazy. I remember seeing an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago, these scammers, who are bilking people out of money. And I remember reading that they like to prey on dentists. That was their favorite group.
Oh yeah.
And so
I couldn't believe it when I got in this industry how often that, I honestly, I'm paranoid that I'm going to have somebody come into the podcast and they're going to be a snake oil salesman, and I've introduced them to 1,000 people,
right?
Dentists, and they're going to, because they spoke with me, I think I'm signing off on them. So I don't let people on my podcast unless either I've been introduced to them by somebody I trust,
right,
or a client. That's the only way they get on the podcast. That hurts my podcast.
Right.
I mean, sometimes I go 2 weeks without a podcast,
right,
because I don't got anybody that I can trust to bring on. But yeah, so tell me about the story.
Well, I don't remember all the specifics of it, but it had to do with some sort of real estate investment. But the one that I find particularly fascinating is there's a friend of mine who you should have on the podcast, David Harris, a Canadian fellow.
Oh yeah, he's been on.
Has he been on?
Yeah,
okay, yeah. With the
third, fourth episode.
The embezzlement issues by staff members I find particularly fascinating, just because it's someone on the inside who's doing it. And as David points out, it's a lot of times the model employee, the one who won't take vacation because she doesn't want anyone else looking at the books, the one who's first one there, last one to leave to kind of cover all those bases. So insidious and crazy.
It's like whenever the people say, my keys were the last place I looked, it's always the last person you would think it's stealing,
right,
because they're the one who...
It's the one that you turn to and go, I think someone's stealing. Can you keep your eyes out for this?
Right.
Have you had anybody affected by...
We have had. And what did I do? I said, here's David's information.
Right.
He's going to be able to figure it out, because, and that's a common misconception a lot of people have about CPAs, is that CPA is supposed to help you not get caught with embezzlement. But the truth is that embezzlement is we actually have to send letters out that say, nobody ever reads them.
Right.
But in our letter, it says, this was not meant to detect fraud. This is not an internal control measure. We're just putting together information that you gave us.
Right.
And the reason is because, to be honest, the CPA can't catch 99% of investments.
Right.
I mean, we might be able to say, hey, we've seen two things that I've been able to catch. And that was, there was very high utility bills going through, and somebody was paying a personal utility bill out of the business.
Oh, I was going to say, wow, that's
Yeah, that was one. And another one was, we asked the client, what are these Walmart expenses? They're like, I haven't been to Walmart in 2 years. I was like, well, someone has, and they've been doing it for they just came on. They've been doing it regularly for the last few years, and one of the managers had a card, and they're just on the grocery store.
Right.
So that was the only embezzlement I've found, but nothing to the tune of what David Harris can find. I mean, he nails people from the wall, and I love it.
Yeah, it's got to be a big fear for most dentists. I'm glad you had him on the show, because I find that to be a particularly fascinating concept, and I think we're going to have him at our meeting this year, because dentists they tend to be caring and compassionate and somewhat
as a medical
introverted.
You got to be able to be willing to give to somebody, to do something to help somebody.
Yeah, and I think that typically it's been a male dentist with kind of an all-female staff, and you do become a family. You've spent more time with them, at least daylight hours, than you might with your own family, just based on how many days you work. And it's just the last thing you'd ever expect. You would expect a brick through the window with somebody coming looking for Vicodin, as opposed to an office manager who's kind of stealing things away. But if inadequate occlusal reduction is the number one mistake that dentists make clinically, at least as far as crown and bridges related, what would you say it is for them financially?
Oh, it's pretty simple, and it's just not understanding. Not spending the time to educate themselves on it. As you guys being medical providers, you spend 15,000 hours learning how to become a dentist, and almost 0 hours learning how to become a business owner. Yet, how many percentage of dentists actually become business owners of a staff of people that depend on them, and patients that depend on them, and everything like that. So it's a lot of people. It's a big. I tell people this story is that I went to undergraduate for accounting, went to a master's degree in accounting, and the master's degree for accounting was very similar to an MBA. There was only 6 hours difference of the total curriculum was different than an MBA. And if someone told me after that education of just specifically business type education, that the day I got out of school, or even within 2 years of being out of school, I was going to be $1 million in debt, and I was going to have 7 or 8 employees, all who had probably an average 15 to 20 years of experience in the business. And they're all female. I would still not know what in the world to do,
right? Other
than I was supposed to go do that,
right?
And so that barrier of being educated about the business side of things, that's a lot of the times what happens.
Right.
If you get in those practices that people end up stealing from, is because they just depend on Betty, the office manager. She's always done all the deposits. She's always done all the bill pay. She's always been the one who owns a credit card. She's always been the one that counts down the cash flow at the end of the day. That's the number one thing. It's just not being educated about it. And that's one of the reasons the podcast exists.
Right. Like, don't you think it'd be easier for a dentist if instead of having, let's say, 15 clinical procedures that they tend to do day in and day out. Wouldn't it be easy if we were just selling 15 objects of something?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I don't know how many times I have people say, well, why can't I time things like McDonald's does whenever they do their staffing and they have their inventory and they know how much supplies are going to cost? I say it's because those places are point of sale services. Like you buy a hamburger, you pay for it.
Right.
In dentistry, you may be a month before you get the money from an insurance company or something like that. They don't understand just the general business around. Now, that's the number one. I'd say the number two is actually learning how to lead a team of people.
Yeah.
So if you get the foundations, then you got to go out there and actually, make that ship make yourself the captain of that ship. And they depend on, like I said, they're caregivers. They want to make everybody happy.
Right.
They're, to just do a little promo for the Voices of Dentistry Summit, there was someone yesterday talking about how the fact that, they had polled, it was Chris Griffin, had polled the staff members of the dental practice and said, they gave him this line, this is a safe place. He said, I want you to put this in this. I wish my dentist would, or the dentist would, the owner would. And it was all about, I wish they'd lead more. I wish they'd be better. I wish they put this person in their place. I wish they do all these things. It was all about being a leader.
Right.
But yet these guys think that by making everybody happy,
right,
they are being a leader.
Right.
And so that'd be, those are both pretty important. I don't think you can get away with being completely deficient at either of those things,
right,
and do really well on the business side. And just kind of circling back to what you talked about, just technology gains, how things are getting better and easier. And I just in the last 10 years since I've been here, I've just seen the things that are going on with Sarek.
Our other big product is a 3D cone beam machine, where we're going from 2 dimensions on an X-ray to all of a sudden being able to see 3 dimensions and going, oh, that's why that root tooth felt funny on that patient for the last 10 years. That root canal's failing. You just can't see it on a regular X-ray.
Imagine doing this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And being able to have that technology then. So things are progressing to where things are going to be able to be optimized for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got to be able to lead people into that.
Right.
It's kind of just rest on the world.
I also think that it's harder for a GP than it is for a specialist. I feel like if you were an endodontist and all you do was endo, or even if you're a GP and all you do is endo, it'd be a lot easier to figure out if you're charging enough or not than the 1, 2, 3 surface filling, the crown and bridge, the dentures, the occlusal guards, all the other stuff, and not really knowing what you're being efficient and making money on.
Code you're billing out every year.
Right.
Like,
not knowing which ones are making money and which ones aren't necessarily based on the time. So I feel like that's one of the things that makes it complicated for GPs too. Whereas if you're just doing one procedure day in, day out, I think you figure out pretty quickly if you're charging the right amount for it or not. So
absolutely. Well, thanks for your time. What else?
Hey, man.
What else? If anyone has any other questions or anything like that, it's a good way to.
Yeah, they go to DrDiTolla.com, DiTolla, or hopefully come by one of the Dentsply Sirona events that we're doing. We're doing Dentsply Sirona World is going to be this September, like the 15th to the 17th at the Venetian out in Las Vegas. We hope to have 8,000 dentists out there. Pretty big event. I wish I could tell you the celebrities we're hiring this year, but last year we had Jerry Seinfeld, Richard Branson, and the band One Republic, and we are
who any of those people are.
we're looking at some big names for this year too. We spent over $1 million on entertainment alone last year, and so we really want to combine the best in education with the best in entertainment, and give attendees 3 days where they'll come away really blown away. And we used to just do imaging and Sarek at these meetings, and now we have endo, perio, ortho. There's a track for every different discipline of dentistry. So we're hoping to get as many GPs as we can. If we can get to 15,000 in 3 years, we can have it in the MGM Grand Arena. But the Venetian's pretty darn nice too, and so yeah, it'd be great if people go to Dentsply Sirona World. .com and check that site out too. It's going to be a fantastic meeting. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, man. Nice to meet you. Thanks for taking time out of the day.
My pleasure.
A very special thanks to Dr. Mike for getting into the nitty-gritty on how to improve crown and bridge procedures, as well as sharing his 25 plus years of dental industry knowledge. So as he mentions, most dentists never truly master the art of crowns and bridges. And so I hope this episode has inspired you to rethink and improve your current procedures. But before we go today, I also want to talk briefly about the Dental Ownership Summit in San Antonio, Texas on February 16th and 17th. If you want to get an inside look into the planning and strategy of fast-growing dental practice owners, you'll love this event. So you can learn more about this at breakawaypractice.com/dental ownership summit, or you can simply text practice to 33444. Again, that's practice to 33444, or visit startyourdentalpractice.com/bonus if you're outside of the U.S. You'll also receive updates on the latest episodes of Start Your Dental Practice, helpful tips for owning and running a practice, and promotional opportunities direct to your inbox. So that's it for today's episode, but that doesn't mean that the learning and implementation have to stop there. I've created a free report called The 15 Numbers That Will Make or Break Your Dental Practice. This report has been downloaded over 1,000 times by dental professionals. So if you want your free copy of this report that's going to outline what the most important numbers are in any dental practice, and it also includes how to look at your numbers, how to set goals, has a whole slew of really important information that is the culmination of all of my experience as a dental CPA, then just go to startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. That is startyourdentalpractice.com/free gift. And so that's it for today, Ambitious Dentist. Again, I'm Jonathan Van Horn, CPA and ABV. I'll see you next week with another world-class practice owner or consultant that will help you start your very own dental practice. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Start Your Dental Practice community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor and go to startyourdentalpractice.com/iTunes to leave your honest feedback and review on iTunes. It's going to help me create a better experience, a better show, a better podcast for you, the ambitious dentist. Your feedback really does help, regardless if you like the show today or not. If you didn't like the show, let me know, because it's going to help me create a better show and podcast for you. Lastly, if you know of anybody that would benefit from today's episode and today's content, today's guest, please feel free to share with them on social media or through email.